All right, hello everyone. We will now move on to our next item on the agenda, the patient panel, moderated by Dr. Amishi Desai. Dr. Amishi Desai is the medical director for kidney and pancreas transplant at Loyola University Medical Center. She trained at University of Chicago. She's an active participant in National Kidney Foundation of Illinois programs and is on the board of the United Network of Programs Organ Sharing. Her interests are in disparities in kidney transplantation and kidney disease in solid organ transplant recipients. So please welcome Dr. Desai.
Thank you. Thank you, Mateo, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone. And I'm glad to see such a turnout today. I am going to be moderating the panel discussion. I'm honored and privileged to introduce all of our members of the panel. And they are going to share their stories with us. And at the end, we'll open up for questions as well. So first, I'm going to call on you, and then maybe you could just raise your hand and give us a little bit of your background after I introduce everyone. We'll kind of come back to the front and go through that process. So we first have Miss Nikki Cardovich. And she was on hemodialysis previously and then has received a kidney transplant. Next to her is Mr. Jason Jones, who is also a transplant recipient, I assume kidney transplant. And then next to him, we have Mrs. Carrie Gifford, who was on peritoneal dialysis and has a kidney pancreas transplant. And then lastly, we have Miss Lisa Givens, who is currently on dialysis. So maybe, Nikki, if you want to start a little bit and give your background, your story, the process you went through, and then we'll just go down the row with each individual.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikki Cardovich. My journey to get to where I am today is actually a pretty long one. I was diagnosed with kidney failure at 13 years old. It is not in my family. It was a surprise to us at my high school physical when blood work was taken. And so during that time, I had a biopsy and we found some scarring in my kidneys, which was diagnosed as FSGS, or focal and segmental glomerulosclerosis. I was kept pretty stable with my kidney function until I was 27 using medication, so I was very lucky in that respect. When I was 27, my kidney function drastically dropped quicker than the doctor expected. And so I ended up on emergency dialysis, had a catheter placed in my chest, and did dialysis for 3 years before receiving my transplant in November of 2018. And I was very blessed to have my father as a match for me, and he and I chose to then participate in a paired exchange program. And my dad donated his kidney to another gentleman, and I received from a younger woman. 3.5 years with my new kidney.
Wonderful. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Jones. Yeah, go ahead.
My story, I guess, is a very long one, of course. I think all of our stories are very long, but trying to shorten it to make it more legible, so to speak. Hopefully I can do that. My story started way before my kidney problem. I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. It runs in my family. I'm going to say 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And of course, like most of us, we don't pay attention to the doctors. We don't take our medicine like we're supposed to. And over a period of time, me not taking my medicine actually led to a slight tear on one of the blood vessels to my kidney, which caused the problem with my kidney. I actually went to the hospital, found out that that was the problem, but I also found out because of the high blood pressure, which caused the vessel to erupt, so to speak, my other kidney was already gone. So it was kind of a traumatic experience to be in the hospital and they tell you, well, you're gonna have to go on dialysis. And I'm like, wait, hold up, do what? I didn't know what dialysis was. I heard about it. You know, you see people in clinics and on TV and stuff like that, and I'm like, that's not what I'm supposed to do. But I did go on peritoneal dialysis. I was doing a lot of traveling around the country doing photography, so I couldn't limit my time to spending, majority of a day or a week in an actual clinic doing the dialysis treatment. So I went on peritoneal dialysis. I actually had my transplant in 2015 after being on peritoneal for 6 years. So right now, that was in 2015, I'm doing pretty good. That's all I can say.
Good. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Carrie Gifford, and just like everybody else, my story is a long one. And don't mind me, I'll probably start crying. I'm on prednisone. In 1976, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and had it over 40-some years, and had always been kind of reminded you could run into kidney failure. And I've always watched my kidneys. Then in 1998, I was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy, and they told me in 20 years, you might run into kidney failure. We don't know. So that takes you to 2019, and my kidneys failed, and nobody knew what it was. Was it the IgA nephropathy? Was it the diabetes? They gave me a test, and the test results didn't come back before I got hospitalized for kidney failure. And the test came back that it was the diabetes. So when I was hospitalized with this, the doctor suggested I go on peritoneal because at the time I was working, and I had no clue what we were even talking about. I'm like the others. I didn't know what peritoneal dialysis was. I really didn't know anything about dialysis. And so my husband and I both said, okay, we'll follow what you suggest. And ended up getting a kidney and a pancreas transplant last July through UW Health in Madison. And pancreas is doing fabulous, the kidney's doing fabulous. I'm just grateful to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa. When I was a teenager, actually after I graduated from high school, I went on to beauty school, and I was a hairstylist. And one day after working in a beauty shop, my ankle started to swell, and actually I started gaining weight, and I thought I was cute, but actually it was excess fluid on me. So I went to the hospital, and they had told me that I was in end-stage renal failure. And I was just like him. I was like, what? Not me. I'm too young. I was too young. But as we all know, that kidney disease does not have an age or a color. And I went on dialysis for over 8.5 years, and I received the kidney transplant. And my kidney lasted 21 years. And after 21 years, the doctors called me in the office, and they told me that they found a spot on my kidney, and it was cancer. So my kidney was removed. I didn't want to remove it, but they told me that if they didn't remove it, the cancer would have spread it. So I thank God that I didn't have to have radiology or anything like that. They just took the kidney out, and I'm currently back on dialysis. They told me after 2 years, if I'm cancer-free, I can go back on the transplant list. So today I am on the transplant list. I have my phone. I'm on call. So I'm waiting patiently for my kidney.
Wonderful.
Amen.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I hope you get that call really soon. And thank you, all of you, for sharing your story. I know it's difficult, and I know you've also been through a journey. So tell the audience, if you can, what were some of the challenges you faced when dealing directly with your kidney disease? And then maybe, Nikki, if we want to start with you, what were some of the challenges your father faced as your caregiver and then ultimately your donor? Just what were the blocks in the road or some of the obstacles and hurdles all of you had to go through and overcome?
So I would say one of the most difficult things for me was just my age, and as young as I was, and being on hemodialysis in center in my early and late 20s. That was a huge challenge for me just because those were prime years where I felt like there were other things I wanted to be doing on a Friday night. And so that was a challenge. And then just trying to, as everyone said, learn about something I had never heard of before, had never been in my family, the education classes that we went through, the numerous tests that my dad and I both went through in order to get to the transplant phase. Dialysis itself was definitely a challenge, and just the toll that that takes on your body. But also, I was extremely grateful for it, knowing that that was the option that I had to keep me alive. I knew that I didn't have a choice, and I tried to look at it as a temporary thing, knowing that there was going to be a transplant in my future. So that was definitely a challenge. The other biggest hurdle I faced was my weight, and because I am a heavier person, I was turned away from a couple of transplant centers just because it is a high-risk surgery. And so that was a hurdle and something that I obviously tried to work on before I found UI Health, where they have robotic kidney transplants, and I was able to get my transplant through them. So we faced a couple of hurdles along the way, but I'm very grateful to be where I am today. My dad, he was 70 years old when he donated his kidney. Again, they told us right away, because of your age, you're too old. We can't have you go through this testing. You don't qualify. And he was persistent. I wish that he could be here with me today, but he's fighting a cold, so he stayed home. But he was persistent. They told him that he would have to go through extra testing. They told him that he would have to lose some weight, and God love him, and I won't cry, but he did everything he could to make sure that he was the person that was there to donate. And so it was definitely challenging for him to go through all of those tests and the time that it took in order to get tested, the time he spent trying to make himself more healthy so that his 70-year-old age did not hinder him from being my donor. And then, of course, because we chose to do the swap program, we were both in the hospital at the same time in surgery, one after the other. And my mom, God love her, was a caretaker to both of us at the same time, bouncing back and forth on opposite ends of the floor of the hospital. So there were definitely hurdles along the way. I wouldn't say that it was by any means an easy process, but it was worth it in every way possible. So.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I think one of the hurdles for me was basically, like I mentioned before, the belief that this could actually happen to me. Just going into the hospital for the very first time. I've never been in the emergency room before. I've never had to talk to doctors that sound like they're speaking in another language. I have no idea what they're saying, and I was by myself. I didn't have family members with me. So trying to get an understanding of what was really going to happen and how I was going to live my life afterwards, because it is a life-altering situation. And if you don't believe in the process, that's where you have problems. So I had to believe, I had to understand it, and I had to educate myself. So that was the biggest hurdle for me, was educating and wanting to know what and how I was going to live the rest of my life. After I got past that, I think everything right now is running smooth. I have a understanding, I have a schedule of how I do things and how I like to do things. One of the other hurdles was, like she just mentioned, as far as weight. I'm 5'6" tall. At my heaviest weight, I was 240. So for me, that was real short and real wide. And breathing was always a couple stairs, and I'm like, oh God, The doctors, they tell you have to lose weight. Unfortunately, insurance doesn't pay for a health club membership. It doesn't pay for a personal trainer. So how do you lose weight? You have to do some deep soul searching to find out what's going to make you happy. I found roller skating. I roller skate now 3 to 4 times a week. During that process, I've lost 60 pounds. And that's just cardio. But roller skating, you have fun, you're listening to music, you're dancing on the skates. So that was a hurdle that I had to get over. And now I look back at it and I'm glad I did it.
My biggest hurdle was the dialysis, quite frankly. I was tired all the time and just worn out and could not imagine each day trudging along, but I kept my faith. It's a big faith journey, and that's got me through. My other biggest hurdle was the pancreas, actually. That ended up being the more touchy organ of the two organs. And I got at least half a dozen calls with potential organs. And then the call would come back and say, nope, the pancreas, there's a problem with the pancreas. And then at one time, they did actually call me up during COVID. My husband couldn't be with me. Nobody could be with me. But I knew this going in. They called me and said, the organs are great. Come on up. And we went through the prep for the surgery, and I was put under. And I woke up out of my sleep, and I could tell in the room people were whispering. And I asked, did this go through? And they said, the doctors will come and talk to you. The transplant did not take place. I had a heart issue that concerned them. And then as it turned out, the pancreas was not of quality. And they found that out at the very last minute. This never happens, but they found that out at the last minute, and it turned out to be a great thing that it didn't go through, but at the time I was just devastated and had to figure out how to get through that process. It's very rare, and I hope nobody ever has to face that, but that was the biggest.
My biggest hurt was always been a believer in God. My grandma brought me up in church, and when I was diagnosed with kidney failure, I was in denial. That big question, why me? That was my biggest question, was why me? Why this had to happen to me? Because I was a good person. I love people. I was making a lot of money in the hair business. I was sharing my money, and it happened to me, and I was angry at everyone. And this young lady over here, she reminds me so much of me when I was going through. She's over here with her mom, and I think she's like in her 20s, and that was the age when I went into kidney failure. And I lost my whole youth. I didn't get a chance to hang around with none of my friends because I was sickly. So that was my biggest hurt, that I did not get a chance to enjoy my youth because I was sickly and I hated dialysis, but who do? Dialysis suck. But, it keeps us alive. It's keeping me alive. So that was my biggest hurdle.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. And yes, dialysis is challenging. There are many methods of dialysis. And I was wondering if you could all speak to maybe some of those differences. What do you see as the biggest changes in your life and your lifestyle now between dialysis and transplant? And then maybe speak to what's different as far as your medical care after transplant. What are the things that are expected of you that were different than what was expected of you when you were on dialysis? We'll just go down the row, I think.
Sure. So I did in-center hemodialysis. We took an education course so that I knew the options, but I was living on my own at the time down in the Peoria area, and so it wasn't an option for me to do in-home because I didn't have a caretaker. Peritoneal was not an option for me just because, again, I didn't have someone who could could help me, but also I continued to teach. I teach fourth grade. I continued to teach through dialysis, and so I didn't have that time where I could fill and drain during the day. And so in-center was my option. I went 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, from after work until 9:30 at night, and that was the life I lived. And so it was a challenge. I had a fistula created in my arm for hemodialysis, but my kidneys failed faster than the fistula could mature. And so that was how I ended up with the catheter placed in my chest. But again, thank God for it, because if that was what I needed, I was happy that there was another option for me to get the treatment that I needed. So being on dialysis was completely life-changing. The changes to my diet, the learning about ingredients that are in things I never knew before. Phosphorus, I hated it with a passion. And it really taught me a lot, and I learned a lot about my health, and I learned a lot about my body. And but sitting through dialysis treatments, the time commitment, the constant blood work, the vaccines that we got in order to be in-center and around those bodily fluids. There was a lot to it, and life was completely different. I mean, almost turned upside down overnight. So I learned, and we went through education, and I made the changes I needed to. My biggest thing was my water gain from in between treatments. I was a big water drinker, and when they told me that I had to be limited on the water I was drinking, I just struggled, especially as a teacher talking all day. I just, water was at my side all the time. And so I struggled a lot. My gains in between treatments were high, and that took a toll on my body as well. So I was very tired and fatigued after my treatments, and then to get home, go to bed, and get up and teach in the morning. So it was a big change for me. Post-transplant, it's kind of amazing to be put out and then wake up from being under anesthesia and know that everything that you had been dealing with for the couple of years prior was now going to be changed again. I remember sitting on Friday night at my last dialysis treatment and celebrating with my techs and nurses because I was going to have my transplant that following Monday. So knowing that I didn't have to go on dialysis anymore was obviously life-changing, but then post-transplant came with a whole bunch of new things to learn and ways to take care of myself. Visiting the hospital multiple times a week, having lab work done many times, being in constant communication with my healthcare team, all of those things were really important to me. I was in the hospital for about 6 days between pre and post-transplant, and everything seems like such a blur. It goes by so, it's crazy to look back on how things have changed over the past couple of years. But I would say that life post-transplant is amazing compared to, what it was before. And no matter what hurdles there were, no matter what difficulties I faced along the way, one, I knew I had the support of my family and friends, and that was a huge thing for me to have that care. But also, I'm just very thankful. I am involved in my health. I ask questions. Sometimes the doctors roll their eyes at me because I ask questions all the time. But I think that, it's important to just make sure that you are an involved patient and that you don't hesitate to ask questions of your healthcare team. Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, thank you. And now you don't have to deal with that phosphorus anymore.
Oh, yes.
And Mr. Jones?
I went on peritoneal dialysis, which I think for me was a blessing because I was given a tour of one of the clinics prior to going on dialysis, and I think they told me that I would have to do 3 times a day. Not 3 times a week, and I can't remember how many hours a day. But when I went to the clinic and I saw everybody kind of in the big chairs, just laying there and just, I don't know, everybody looked stoic to me, just kind of out of it, kind of dead. And I'm like, no, I am not doing that. It's got to be some other way. So they told me about peritoneal dialysis. And again, like I said before, I was a photographer, and I was traveling. So I was going to Atlanta, Florida, and things like that. So I couldn't take the time to spend in another city going to a dialysis treatment center and then still do the work there and then come back home. It was just too much. So peritoneal gave me an outlet to be able to travel. And I don't know if everybody knows, but at least my peritoneal treatment was 3 times a day, but for 10 to 15 minutes, I did an exchange of fluid. So for me, that was way better than spending half the day in a dialysis clinic. Everybody kept saying, I kept hearing stories about, well, peritoneal, you'll wound up, it doesn't work as well as the hemodialysis. It doesn't work as well, and I kind of just took a chance. It was my life, and I wanted to do with my life the way I wanted to deal with it. So I went on peritoneal dialysis, and I got peritonitis one time, and she said that hurt. Yeah, it did hurt. It hurt bad, and I mean, it was worse than the actual kidney process. And I know exactly how I did, because the process of peritoneal dialysis, you're doing everything yourself. So you're opening your insides up to air. And I remember I was doing it, I was making my exchange, and the phone rang, and it startled me. And I had my tube open, and I thought I couldn't remember which one it was supposed to go to because I got startled. So I had to put it somewhere because I just couldn't hold on to it. I put it in whichever one, and after that, a day or two later is when my stomach just like exploded. It's just, I can't even explain the pain. And I had to call the doctor, and I had to run to the clinic, and they did something, they put a little injection thing. So it took a couple days to kind of subside, but it was a crazy, crazy situation. So for me, it made me realize how important what I'm doing is, because your body does not like certain things, and it will let you know. So I made sure that never happened again. So after that, post dialysis, post kidney transplant, like she just said, the lifestyle change as far as the diet, the exercise, and things like that. You just kind of have to buckle down. I had to buckle down and really get my mind right and figure out what I was going to do to get through the rest of my life. I got my transplant when I was 50. So I look at it like, it's kind of strange to say, but as a black man, if I can get to 80, I'm good. All right? But those next 30 years is going to determine how I get to 80. I don't want to be old, slumped over, can't do anything. I want to be able to live these next 30 years. I have to get through them happily. And that's where the mindset comes in, where you have to educate yourself and figure out what are you going to do for the rest of your life based on what's happening to you right now. And that's where after the kidney transplant, I really had to come to grips with, I had to change my diet. I had to eat specific foods. I had to get rid of certain foods. And to add on to the post kidney transplant, I also was diagnosed in 2019 with diabetes. So that was a whole nother aspect to it, where now you got to get rid of salt and sugar, you know. And like I said, I started roller skating. So the diet, the exercise are the most important things that's going on with me right now, as far as saving this kidney, getting rid of diabetes, which I don't take any more medication for my diabetes because I got the weight down. So, and that weight thing is so important. The weight, if you're a little bit overweight, you have to figure out how to get that weight off. You'll feel so much better. I feel like a new person. When the weight started coming off and I started seeing it, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm good now. Let's go. So you really have to get your mind right. That's all I can say is Get it in your head that you have to change your life and you can't worry about what other people are doing. This is about you.
Thank you.
So as I said earlier, peritoneal dialysis was my treatment. And like I said, the doctor just said, this is what we recommend. So while I was in the hospital, they inserted a tube, and fortunately, the doctor I saw, they gave me all my training, and my husband was with. I'll be honest, my mind was kind of just in circles, and I remember thinking, how in the world are we going to do this? My treatment was nightly, 7 days a week, for 8 hours. And then by the end, I was a dual program where I had treatments that I would insert fluid in me in the morning, and I would have to walk around all day with that fluid. And then in the evening, I would hook up, and that fluid would leave, and I'd be cleaned out with more fluid. It ended up being fine. The only thing I ran into once was fluid overload, and had to be hospitalized for that. But that was the extent of the issues. Baxter had a peritoneal dialysis machine, and I was fortunate enough, I had the latest and greatest, where all you had to do was hook up, and the doctor had the program in, and you selected that. And so there was really no thinking about it. But I will say my husband helped me a lot, because in the beginning I was just so confused. And if there wasn't somebody there to remind me how to do this, that was the big factor. It really does help to have a support person, and I feel blessed that I was able to have that. I was 54 when I had my transplant. Kind of the same thing as far as the diet. As a type 1 diabetic, I always tried to read labels and things like that, but the kidney diet is just such a different level. And nothing really tasted good to me. I don't know if any of you ran into that, but nothing tasted good. And they would say, eat more egg whites, or do this, do that. And that was kind of a struggle. But, and then after, it's such a new way of living. You want to take care of your organ the best you can. For 30 years, I was always exercising, but probably the last 5-6 years, I wasn't exercising as much, and I was gaining weight. And so now I'm trying to figure out, how do I lose this weight? And just like the gentleman, I've recently started an exercise program and eating foods that are good for the kidney, hopefully. And yeah, that's.
What was the question?
We're going to start with you next time. The question is, can you speak a little bit to how your journey felt when you were on dialysis, and then you had your transplant when you were younger? I know you don't have the transplant now, but what were the changes in your life that you saw between the two different modalities?
Okay. Actually, I did peritoneal dialysis when I was young. And when I was young, I thought I had shortcuts, and I got that peritonitis 3 times. Yeah, and it was really tough. When you're young, you think you can get away with a lot of shortcuts, but it wasn't no shortcuts. You had to be sterile and clean in order for that process. And after my 3rd time, they told me that I didn't qualify anymore for peritoneal dialysis, so I had to go on hemodialysis. And like you said, when you go into that unit and you see all of these sick people, and you're not thinking you sick too, but you know it scares you. But yeah, we have to learn that we are not alone. That we are all in this together. We're supposed to support one another in this journey. And yeah, that's what I did, peritoneal dialysis. I was able to travel with my church family out of town with peritoneal. That was one of the things that I was able to do, was travel when I was on peritoneal. And when I got that call for my transplant, I was 27. Now I'm 56, so I got to hurry up and get this kidney before I get too old. So yeah, when you get your kidney transplant, it's like you say, it's a new way of life. I was able to do things that I wasn't able to do on dialysis. I was able to join the transplant team. That's the Olympic team that every 2 years, the transplant games, actually this year, the transplant games are going to be in California, San Diego, California. So if any of you all have transplants, you all should be going to the transplant games and enjoying this free life. I call it the free life. When you get a transplant, you're free. You know, it's freedom. You have freedom and you have control over your life, and you can do more things in life from when you were on dialysis.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys have done so excellent in your stories, because I have no more questions sitting in front of me to ask. So I'm going to actually open it up to the audience. And do we have any questions from anyone in the audience for our panel?
All right, so hello, test. All right, great. I've got the mic, so I'll run over and hand you the mic as we get started.
I wanted to say that even though I am on dialysis, when I started on dialysis, I made the decision right then and there how I was going to live the rest of my life. So even though I'm on dialysis, my life is very, very full. I'm the president of my building. I live in a senior citizen building. I'm the president. We have activities that I help the building to do. I am an ambassador at the dialysis center that I'm in. I run programs like on World Kidney Day. I do a program then. I'm now working on the Illinois Foundation Kidney Walk. We do that every year, and I have a team. And then I have my church that I work in. I teach Sunday school. So my life is very full. True enough, I have to slow down on certain days. Like on dialysis days, I'm a little bit slower. But I take my time and I plan very well. I plan my days, my outfits and everything so that I can do things in a timely manner. I'm a little slower now, but they call me the road runner in this wheelchair. They call me the road runner. So my life is very full, and I just want to say that just because you're on dialysis does not mean that your life stops. Right. That you have to keep going, keep moving, and keep it moving until you go.
Right.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask her a
yes,
question?
You're absolutely right.
Can I ask her a question?
Yes, sure.
I want to ask you a question. How do you get your dialysis unit involved?
It took a lot of effort. First of all, I had a very good social worker, and she encouraged me. My first project was to get a senator to come to our dialysis unit. Mm. And at that time, it was Obama. Mm. So I was writing a letter, busy writing a letter, and I kept letting certain people read my letter, and they kept saying to me, well, why do you think he gonna come to your unit? Why you think he gonna come to, because of your letter, you know? So I kept rewriting, and my social worker kept saying, go at it, and I did go at it. That was my first project. He didn't come because he had just made the announcement that he was going to run for president. But he did send his people. So I still accomplished my goal. And after that, I went for World Kidney Day and started. I made up a game for bingo. And then I asked them, could I go into the unit and play bingo? So they let me play bingo in the unit. So I had it called, it wasn't bingo, it was called Da Di Vita. And under each letter, I had a category. And I made up the categories. Then I gave them sheets. I passed out cheat sheets to everybody. Then I went to the dollar store and I got gifts. And then I had snacks. I dealt with the nutritionist to get snacks. And then I would go into the unit and just start talking and playing the game. And after a while, people got in it. And then there was a discussion around the room eventually about those terms and those things that we were playing a game about. So that was one thing. And then the next thing was the walk. And I started going and I started pushing people, come on, go with me. And I would put a sign up and just, you know, we go into the kidney. Then I got the staff involved. Then I got my doctor involved, Dr. Rosman, who was over our clinic. He donates, and then I got my own doctor to donate. And just, it was me at first, and then it was 1, 2, and then it was 1, 2, 3. Now it's the staff and some people. So I had to work at it every year, but I didn't give up. One time I almost gave up, and then I said, duh, I'm going to go and do it again. And then when I did it again, I had much better turnout. So every year I get a better turnout.
Oh, okay.
And I'm selling T-shirts too.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful
Thank you
story.
so much.
Congratulations
Thank you for sharing
for
that.
all that energy.
Any other questions from the audience? Don't be shy. How many have chronic kidney disease within the audience? And then how many are on dialysis? And then how many of you all have transplants? Everyone had transplants in my, okay. So I guess maybe I'll take it back to the panel, and maybe you can tell us maybe that one piece of advice you would give the audience that you think would be the most valuable for them in their journey, or was maybe the most valuable for you. And I'm going to start in the other direction, so we'll start with you, Ms. Gifford. Nikki was sweating a little bit, so I'm going to let her have a break, and we'll start with you. What is the one piece of advice or the biggest piece of advice you would give to the audience on your transplant journey, or on your journey, kidney care journey, sorry?
Keep hope alive.
Ditto to that. I'm sorry. Ditto to that. And if you have a faith, I'm Christian. I spoke to my God every day for his support. And I really firmly believe he or she got me through this.
Educate yourself. Be your own advocate, and make sure you don't take any stuff from these doctors, because they will give you whatever they want to give you. But if you have the right to say, no, that doesn't sound right. So educate yourself to make sure that you know what you're doing for your own body and for your own health and for your own longevity.
Can I say ditto? Is that allowed? No, I wholeheartedly agree, but also just as we had spoken earlier, that mindset and continuing to try your best to stay positive and mindset is such a huge part of this journey. Others have said, why me? And I agree. Always ask why me, and, why does this happen to a good person, and so forth. So keeping that positive mindset and not being afraid to ask questions, and educate yourself.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, for sure.
The situation that I was just talking about as far as being your own advocate, my diabetes doctor, she, for some reason, she works at the University of Chicago. For some reason, I always feel like she likes to experiment. So she always wants to change my meds. And it got to a point where I had to tell her, I am not changing any med. There's nothing, my numbers that you asked me to get to are correct, and they are where they're supposed to be. So there's no need to change my medication. And she'll say, well, this one is better for you, in the long run. No. Leave my stuff the way it is. I'm feeling good. I have no side effects from it. So when I say be your own advocate, don't just take what they say at face value. Find what you want to do with your life.
Good advice. Solid advice from all of you. Thank you so much to all of you today for sharing your stories. They all touched me, and I feel for all four of you are very strong, and I'm rooting for all of you to be successful with your transplants. And then, Ms. Gibbons, I have a feeling you're going to get a call maybe today is what I'm feeling. So you keep that hope.
In Jesus' name.
Thank you, everyone.